So, hello and welcome to the Top Floor, the podcast where Charlotte area CEOs get to tell their leadership journey. My name is Jeff Cass. I'm an executive coach and leader of a peer advisory group for CEOs and business leaders here in Charlotte, and I'll be your host today. So, normally we spend our time with private companies, but today we have a bit of a treat. We get to spend some time with a government agency, and I'm really happy to introduce Keva Walton. Keva, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Enjoying the opportunity.
Yeah. And you are the CEO of the Mecklenburg County Alcohol Control Board, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so you and I have talked a little bit about this. I know there's a lot we want to bring up because I have a little bit of confusion about kind of how this operates in different counties or different states because I've experienced it in several different states. But let's just start with a general question. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Well, I am the CEO of Mecklenburg County Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. And we are a 76-year-old, and I will call it social enterprise. And what that means by definition is we run a business and we have a very strong commitment to investing in alcohol, education, treatment, and substance abuse. So other social enterprises, a Goodwill is an example, a YMCA is an example. So it's that double bottom line, if you will. We run a business and we invest in people and community. And I have the great privilege to be a part of this organization and actually have been a part of those other two organizations in my past life. And, I love the model. I love the business model.
Okay.
You do well and you do good. And this particular organization has been doing it for 76 years.
Okay. Wow, that's a long time. And by
Yeah.
business, the part of the business that you operate, so just so I'm clear, so it is the ABC stores in Mecklenburg County, as well as some distribution to other folks that get alcohol in the county, correct?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and to back up a little bit about your first question. So coming out of prohibition in the 30s, it was decided, once spirituous liquor was made legal, a legal substance, it was left to states to determine, okay, how are we going to manage this? And it's important, let me say at the outset, we often forget that spirituous liquor is a very addictive substance. And, for most of us, that's not a problem, but for many, it's a challenge and it can lead to other issues. So that's why the whole managing of spirituous liquor is a thing. And to be clear, every state has some level of oversight at the state level, whether it's an open state or controlled state. Every state has a level of control and pricing and all of that sort of thing. The difference with North Carolina is who sells and distributes the spirituous liquor. In this case, North Carolina, and there are 17 of those across the country. And in North Carolina's case, coming out of the pandemic prohibition, they decided, well, you know what, we're going to leave it up to jurisdictions to create their own boards. And those boards will have responsibility they will be governed by statutes by North Carolina. And the local convening authority, which in this case would be Mecklenburg County Commission, gave us our enabling act that says, you are birthed, you are a thing. And they will have responsibility of the sale and distribution of spirituous liquor. And Mecklenburg County, in their great foresight back in 1940 something, said, well, you know what? Because the legislation did not limit it to one board. So hence we have several boards across the state. But Mecklenburg said we're going to have one board, and that one board is going to be responsible for Mecklenburg County. And within that enabling legislation, they also set up an evergreen strategy from an entrepreneurial standpoint, a fund that continuously funds itself to invest back into the city of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, and the public libraries. So in addition to state statutes have a requirement that we invest in alcohol education and public safety. In addition to that, Mecklenburg County said, well, we're going to invest back into our city, our county, and the small towns within Mecklenburg County. So for 76 years, this social enterprise has been investing back into people and community.
Yeah, so the business of selling liquor for you, I mean, the profit is really the reinvestment in the community, is what you're saying, right?
Absolutely. We do not keep profits. Those profits go back into people. And I'm proud to say cumulative, nor are we tax exempt. Let's be clear. And so, so we pay taxes back to the state and locally. So all in 76 years, that cumulative total is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 billion
Okay.
back into the state, the county, the city, public libraries. And I really want people to hear that, because again, maybe a thing that in this digital age we may have forgotten, but libraries are important because not everybody is digitally savvy. Excuse me.
Yeah, so we need books,
Yep.
supplying a great service to the community. And what we were speaking yesterday as well, there's also a medical component to what you do, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Well, somewhere in 1957, I mentioned a substantial part of our investment is around alcohol education, treatment, prevention, and research. And so this board co-founded what is now Anuvia. And so, just the whole awareness building and treatment of substance misuse. We know alcohol is often the first introduction to so many other challenging substances. And so we've been pouring into that area for quite a while. We also have a grant program started, I think, in the 80s, 90s maybe. And we invest dollars into grassroots organizations who are doing substance education, misuse treatment and education as well. And, that's really important because, a lot of young people who might be experimenting, and nowadays there are substances out there that are really fatal. And so you see a lot of these grassroots organizations receive a grant from Mecklenburg County ABC, and they're going where kids and people are. And so we're building an ecosystem of support.
Okay. Yeah, I read through your annual report, and if Anuvia and the library are two of your major benefactors, you had a long list of other people that were benefiting from this, right? I mean, do you have a number of people that were benefiting from this, or do the grassroots organizations?
Absolutely. And I forgive me, I don't have the number. We do track the number of people served in a year, and it's growing exponentially in terms of just touches. And I'm sure it's somewhere in that annual report. I can't pull that number right now, but and again, oftentimes they are small, and we are working. We want to invest in that nonprofit to be successful in that community, because that's where people are. I mean, it is great to have the Anuvias of the world. That's great. And so we've got layers of access to service. And so that's very important to us. I will add that we have a law enforcement team, and they are duly sworn officers. Of course, they do the ABC stuff, inspections and all that, but our law enforcement team is very committed to community engagement. So they spend a lot of time out with community groups. We have a stay program where we work with schools and go into schools and help schools and those children learn about substance misuse education. So we're coming at it from all angles. And again, I just think it's vitally important that we never take for granted that everyone can manage substance misuse.
So just a little bit that I've talked to you, to me, I mean, I come away with the purpose of your organization is very clear. I mean, maybe you can just talk about that, because you shared some things with me yesterday I thought were interesting.
Yeah. Well, we as an organization, and again, like any organization, like any business, we just completed a major kind of rework of our vision, mission, and values. And again, it's back to that social enterprise, and we've actually incorporated that wording into our vision and statement. Is that our mission is to lawfully sell spirituous liquor. It's that simple and it's that complex, because lawfully says a lot of things. One, you're of age. Two, you're not intoxicated. Three, in terms of our mixed beverage or on-premise accounts, you're being responsible as a business owner with the sale and storage of spirituous liquor. Again, not to be punitive, but to really take serious. This has the potential to be a major public health concern. We saw that during the pandemic when people were in lockdown. I believe that's what you're talking about in terms of folks were at home, and one casual drink might have led to 2 to 3. And, sad to say, we also saw, speaking with our partner at Anuvia, that so many young people, as young as grade 8, experienced addiction during the pandemic. And so, we may not see it. I always ask when I'm giving a talk, I ask everyone to think about your family, your neighbor, your coworker. Somewhere in your circle is at least one person who's struggling with addiction, whether it's privately or publicly. And it's amazing when you do that. And I ask people, just raise your hand. And clearly 85, 90% of the room raises their hand.
Okay. Yeah, because you said, your purpose is to lawfully sell, alcohol, but, the purpose as well, the add on to it is to give back to the community and deal with those things, right? I mean, that was really important to you, correct?
That's the other half of it. Yes, sell it legally, but invest. And I love the term invest, because people are investments, and what we pour into them, no pun intended, is an investment. Part of my background comes out of economic development as well, economic and community development. And, at the end of the day, in a place like Charlotte, our economic progress works as long as we have a healthy, well-trained, prepared workforce. And so if you begin to minimize that, you begin to compromise the economic structure of the city. And, forgive me if I'm getting too out there ethereal, but that's kind of how I think about it. And so if our children, if our families, if our households are compromised by addiction, and inevitably that addiction impacts everything in that household, that grows up into our community. And certainly right now, we've got a lot of things going on in our community. And I always say to my team, okay, this is our lane. This is what we can positively, hopefully impact. And, there are others, but, and my hope is, everybody picks a lane. This is one that we can work in and have impact and hopefully scale and leverage.
Okay. All right, so I understand, and I think the listeners understand the investment in the community. Are there any other investments that you make with the profits, so to speak, from this, outside of Anuvia, the library, and the many startup organizations that you're talking about?
Yeah. Principally, those are our principal ones. And again, I would say law enforcement is the other side of that. Again, by general statute, we are required out of our gross receipts to fund law enforcement and alcohol education. Again, on top of that, out of our net proceeds come Mecklenburg County, small towns, city of Charlotte, and library. But the law enforcement piece is a big piece that you may not recognize. And again, we have a team of 16 fully sworn officers. And here's the important part that you may never see is we also do that work with any of our mixed beverage permittee owners. So that's a bar, a restaurant, a corner pub, anyone that sells spirituous liquor. Our law enforcement team is actually in there working with their servers to really understand about over-serving. to understand about the legalities of not following the law. And again, that's important because, inevitably somebody is going to leave an establishment and get behind the wheel of a car. And so, we do a lot of in-person with restaurants and bars. They call us up. There's no charge. That's what we do. Pandemic enabled us to think differently about that. We automated that process, and so we can do it in person. And there's also an online tool that someone can go through, and there's it's a wonderful production our team put together. And there's actually a test at the end. If you successfully complete, there's a certificate that you print out for yourself. So because it's often hard to get all a team together at one time, but it's important for that establishment, and because there are legal ramifications for overservice for that establishment and for that server, and they need to understand that. So that's another part of investing back into our community. And again, none of that is of charge to any of our establishments. And in Mecklenburg County, we've got well over 1,200.
1,200 locations that serve alcohol. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And that, again, hotels, restaurants, bars, anywhere that sells a mixed drink in Mecklenburg County.
Okay. Right. So training a team like that is significant. I think doing it digitally makes sense. Tracking it digitally, which it sounds like what you're doing, is probably not different than most companies in the private sector that are doing that. Because that's exactly, I know from my experience, we did the exact same thing with our people who were located, throughout different parts of a couple states, for me.
Well, and again, back to our why. I love Simon Sinek's start with why. Our responsibility is not to just sell the liquor, but to make sure it's done so and managed so in a responsible way. And I know there are folks who, take issue with the structure of North Carolina for whatever reason, but I'd understand the why behind it. And that, we take this very seriously, carding and making sure, young folks will try, and it's our job and I would ask any of your listeners to impart this knowledge and wisdom to their young people under the age of 21. And if you don't know where, we'll help you find something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you something, Keva. I mean, how the Mecklenburg County kind of process of managing, the alcohol compared to other counties in North Carolina, or even some of the counties or the state of South Carolina, which is right across the border and very close to many of the people that are buying at ABC stores?
Right. Well, in North Carolina, I'll start there. Very similar. I mean, the difference is certainly the size, scale, and scope of Mecklenburg. Certainly, by far, land area, people area, we are a very large progressive county. Well, again, kind of drawing on my economic development background, literally, we have people the world over here. And so they're coming into this space with all kinds of different experiences about consumption and access and all of that. So the pressures that maybe we feel may be very different from a smaller board in a smaller town. And so that compels us to be much more progressive in our thinking and our thoughts. So, but in terms of overall management, very similar structure. Difference being size, scope, and scale. Again, we operate 31 retail operating facilities. The whole mixed beverage, as we refer to it, with 1,200 or so customers. And again, that's everything from Bank of America Stadium to Hornets Arena, all of those. Anybody that's selling spirituous liquor is coming through here. Now, when you get to, as some refer to as an open state like South Carolina, again, there is a state level somebody that oversees the incoming and how all taxes and all of that related to spirituous liquor. The difference is a private entity may be the one doing the selling and distribution. And to some, that the perception is that the market is more advantageous to be in a private market. There are pluses and minuses to that. And I will tell you, I was visiting an open state in the not too distant past here. And I went to, because I'd like to do research, nothing better than doing some investigation. And I called a larger private retailer to see if they had a particular well sought after spirit. And the answer was a little surprising to me. Yeah, we have it, but it's only available to our top purchasers. So and went on to say it never hits the floor because that's only for our top spending customers. Well, okay, because you would hear, oh, well, you go to an open market and oh man, it's just flowing. The grass is greener over there. Well, in Mecklenburg, again, keep in mind, we've got a marketplace of well over 1 million people. I mean, pretty much are very close to it. And so the competition for one bottle in Mecklenburg is very different from that one bottle in maybe South Carolina. Well, I don't know. A lot of people drive south to get that one bottle, but the competition is keener. And so, but in our market, there is no top seller. Now, you got to get there. And I will say over the years, we've gotten more of the highly sought after spirits. And people, they know when it hit and they watch our delivery schedule. But, I just found that shocking. And then the price point is a differential. Not everything is less or more, it just depends on product. But for this particular product, substantially more for that product in this open state. And then you don't even get the chance to buy it unless you have spent a certain level with it. So, I would ask folks before you make a judgment to just understand the why. And, again, all of our dollars are going back into the people of North Carolina, Mecklenburg County, and City of Charlotte. Those private dollars, I can't speak to where those dollars go, but rest assured, first and foremost, they're running a pure business, not a social enterprise. Clearly there's some taxes going into the state. But as a system, the whole state of North Carolina, well over $700 million went back to the state of North Carolina.
Okay.
And that's important. That's very important.
Yeah. So other states where it's a private enterprise it's for profit, whereas your profit goes into Anuvia and the library and many of the other grassroots kind of organizations you were talking about.
Correct.
Okay.
Big distinction.
And you and I was in Gaston County when you and I were talking, and you had told me that there are multiple boards in Gaston County, unlike the one board in Mecklenburg County, which to me, struck me as, okay, it makes it much simpler for you to do certain things, having one board. Maybe can you just comment on that?
Yeah, well, again, the coming out of Prohibition, and this speaks to the foresight of our founding fathers here in Mecklenburg at the time that said, one board for Mecklenburg County. Now, I'm sure there was a lot of spirited debate back in the day about this whole issue. First of all, just around the legalization of spirituous liquor, as we're having now with cannabis and other things. But our state legislation did not limit it to county boards. So there, across the state of North Carolina, there are boards that are consolidated like Mecklenburg. And then there are other counties that are not. And so you could end up with a smaller board with 1 or 2 stores as opposed to a consolidated. So there are several around the state that are consolidated, like Meck County.
Okay. Yeah, but having one in one county probably makes it easier to concentrate your dollars in the community investment that you're making, I'm guessing. I mean,
Well, we feel that way. And again, whether you ever consume the drop of spirituous liquor or not, you have benefited in some way. Whether it's if you've ever walked across the threshold of a library in any part of Mecklenburg County, have received services from the city of Charlotte or Mecklenburg County in any way. This was built, and I use the term evergreen, to continue over a long period of time, to continue to pay a dividend back into a social purpose.
Yeah. Okay. That helps. I tell you, for me, I learned a lot in our discussion. I hope everybody kind of takes something out of this that,
Yeah.
the why you're doing this is really good. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is benefiting the community, and it's an investment in the community.
It is.
Now,
Yep.
yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
let me just say this. Let's go a little bit to the business, the side of things. So you're operating 31 stores. You're servicing or making available alcohol for 1,200 institutions that mix product. You're not immune to the same problems that every private industry has, right? I mean, keeping people, managing people, those kind of things. Talk a little bit about that, if you would, because you've done some interesting things in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, like everyone, we had no choice but to learn from the pandemic. I mean, our team, we're in the process of, there's no such thing as calm water, but we're in calmer water now. So we've taken stock of all those things we learned. And so, yeah, I think everybody saw ours play out on the news. So, the shelves were bare, the supply chain, there was no glass, there was no plastic, there was no cardboard. The grapes in France had an issue, and there was the shipping across. It all kind of came to roost at one time. Not to mention that we're on lockdown. So, we saw a significant drop in our on-premise accounts, with mixed beverage restaurants, bars being closed. And so, I want to underscore, those are small businesses for the most part. And that again, drawing on my economic development entrepreneur background, that's important for me to make sure we're trying to be a resource to them. So we had to learn from all of that. And so like any other business, we dealt with staffing shortages. Unfortunately, when the pandemic, if it landed in one store, we were very close to having to begin to shutter stores on some rotation, simply because we didn't have enough staff. Which led us to an innovation, and not really, because the rest of the world had already adapted to online retail. We had not, and so we pursued a path to do so, and that is now active in the sense of it's ABC to go. And you can actually browse online, pay online. You still have to pick up in the store. You have to be the person who placed the order. We're going to card and check, because we're not lessening the protocols around safety. And so, but, if you know what you want, well, you can browse online, and, you just go into your store and pick it up, and your order is ready for you at the counter. At some point in some of our stores, that will become curbside. Not every store is conducive to that. But so we got that up and running, and that was a direct result of at one point we were letting 10 people in at a time, and it just was not sustainable, and we did not know, well, where's this thing going? And we're going to need another option if we're going to be viable and support our customer base. And it was a business decision. We can't control the grapes in France, but and there were a lot of other things we had to pivot on regularly to try to stay above fold. Again, it's hard, like any other company, to deal with all that in the media's eye. But nothing to hide. We wanted to be as transparent as possible to make sure customers knew what was going on.
Okay. Yeah, and even how you service some of the bars and restaurants changed, right? Because you felt like it was easier to do that a different way, right? Maybe you can talk about that, Kiva.
Yeah, yeah. You never know where inspired innovation and action comes from. So I had a phone call one day from a mixed beverage. We because products were so difficult to get, we typically, before the pandemic, we had mixed beverage ordering and servicing at each of our stores. But the problem was uneven distribution of products. So you place an order in your normal pickup place, well, their delivery and they don't have that product. So what we did is we consolidated into fewer stores so that we can have more product availability, lesser trip for the vendor.
Mm-hmm.
That was great to a point, but out of that came we had a customer. I was on the phone with someone who wasn't happy with the way they weren't aware that their location for pickup had changed. They had a change in their organization, and the communication didn't go all the way through, and they go to pick up. It's like, no, you're up at another store. So we worked through that, and before the person hang up, they said, well, have you guys ever thought about a store just for mixed beverage on-premise accounts where we can go and shop just like the retail people? Because again, in North Carolina, there's retail and there's mixed beverage. And I thought, well, that's pretty good. I like it. and we had a property that a road project was coming, or we were told was coming. I will tell you it still hadn't come, but that's okay. And so that we had relocated a store. And so this property was actually sitting vacant. And so we transformed that store into the first of a kind for us, a mixed beverage only location. It's available to mixed beverage permittees only.
Mm-hmm.
They can get expedited service there. You forgot a case of whatever, or you ran out, we can get that. You call us and it can be ready in 10 minutes within a certain size. If it's a large order, it takes this time. They can also do some targeted shopping. There are some products that we know are more desirous by our mixed beverage customers, or in high demand or special order. So we make sure we have those items available for them there. And that has been, from a business standpoint, a phenomenal success. From a business and a customer service standpoint, has been a phenomenal success. And so we're looking at, how might we replicate that? This particular location is in the southern part of our county. And interesting enough, we're getting people driving from a distance to get to that location. So how might we replicate that in the northern half of our county? So again, out of, one thing I'm always saying is, why waste a crisis? Let's leverage. And our team did a phenomenal job with that. And so we're constantly on the hunt for innovations.
Right. And technology obviously is on the minds of a lot of private enterprises. How do you use it to continue to get better? I mean, how are you using technology to improve the business?
Well, I can't say that I'm a data geek, but maybe I am, because, in this day and age, you cannot run an enterprise of any shape or form without the access to data, technology, and innovation. We're no different. And, so I immediately want, because, there's so much data all around us here, everything's a data point. And I like trending and predictive analysis and that sort of thing. Excuse me. And so I was really ready to go. And our IT leader said, well, not so fast. I was like, what do you mean? I'm ready to go. Let's go. He said, well, we've got to kind of shore up our computing platform to be able to drive some of these things that you want to do. So literally, it's taken us maybe a good year and a half to to migrate to the cloud, to do all these things that support the technology. To be able to do ABC to go, we had to have a computing platform to be able to drive that. And so, it took a good minute to kind of get there, upgrading our spine of our database. And so now we're in a position to be more data driven. We're working feverishly on, we're using interface Power BI, or Power Business Intelligence, I believe is the name of it. But it is a graphic interface with our a database that will enable us to visualize all of our data. Ultimately, where I want us to be is to be able to drive that data out to all our store managers so that they see literally real time, what are your sales? How are your sales moving? What product isn't moving? How do we need to readjust our shelving? What products do we need to move to this side of the town where they're selling better? We have a lot of that intuitively, and that's great. Never discount the gut, but let's supplement that with the data that drives that. And so, that's a big push right now. We're really working on that and getting all that captured. And we actually have made great strides even without that by a good old spreadsheet and somebody who's good at data analytics. We have a person who that's his role, is just to really help us get our collective acts together on data. So that's a big thing. We're also looking at an innovation with our on-premise accounts. According to state legislation, if you're an on-premise account or a bar, restaurant, your bottles at this point have to have a label that identify that that bottle belongs to your establishment and that you are permitted to do that. There's a lot of other things can happen when that doesn't happen. So we're looking at, okay, it's a very manually laborious task. And so we're looking at how to automate that. And we've got some good intelligence on that so that it, ultimately, I'd love to be a place where we can get to the point where we have a smart label that can generate data on its own and populate reports. But this is the first iteration. Let's just get the stamp on the bottle without a manual process. So those are some, again, a lot of this came out of pandemic, and a lot of it is driven by growth, quite frankly. Like any other organization, again, I keep saying I'm drawing on my economic community development background, but we are so fortunate to be in a city, county, region like Mecklenburg that's driven, whose growth, in spite of challenges, even during recessionary periods, bounce back quicker than most. The diversification of our industry clusters, the transportation hub, what I think our airport is 5th in the world now in terms of flights, that drives all these other pieces. And, I say to our team all the time, this is not about it. We're part of the hospitality tourism ecosystem. And let's be clear about that. And let's understand that, it's our responsibility to support that growth. And I know we talk about pandemic was just devastating to the hospitality tourism industry.
Right.
It is coming back strong. And in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, we now have ACC here. Soccer is growing. Professional sports, the tournaments are here. The Loving Life or Living Life Music Festival was a big deal here. So, we're part of supporting that economy. Excuse me.
Yeah, so you want to do it well, correct? And it seems, everything we've talked about really kind of shows me, your push is to get better every day. So let me shift gears a little bit here on some of the questions. So you talked a little bit about things you've done to improve, but what are your biggest challenges today, Keva?
Yeah, right now we are knee deep, or some people would say we might be neck deep into succession planning.
Mm.
We've been doing some fireside chats with our workforce around some changes we're making in the organization. And probably our oldest employee among us, who's been with us for 40 years, I'm proud to say, and in some capacity, he says he's retiring, but we're not letting him go. But he asked a very poignant question. He said, well, what are you going to do to be ready for the next pandemic?
Mm.
I was like, well, now there's some food for thought. Whether it's a pandemic or not, there is probably something around the corner. And my response to that was making sure we've got the bench ready to respond. We've proven to ourselves, if not anybody else, how to pivot and to survive and thrive in crisis, and to turn crisis into opportunity. Now, how do we, institutionalize, if you will, that resilience in people? The next two layers down. Another employee referenced their military service, and they said, well, when I was in the military, it was the person in front of you and the person behind you. How are they equipped to go into that? And so that's a biggie for us. It right now is around that. Of course, we don't exist in a bubble. So all the things that are out there in the world affect us. Workforce is always a big one. There are just different expectations now of employees, of employers, keeping pace with that, and incenting people to be a part of this great organization and to stay with us a while. So those are realities. Of course, there are always, being quasi-governmental, there are always things lurking about. There are those who have a perspective on what this entity should look like in North Carolina. So that's always a dynamic. So those are some of the things that just in my mind are always top of mind.
So when you're thinking about succession planning, had you done much succession planning prior to the pandemic, or is most of this relatively new?
Yeah, I think we didn't have time. We were so busy, literally every day, and like everybody was. I mean, I can say, that's something, and I hope, and in my best prayers and wishes, that none of us has to go to that extreme again, because it was extreme. And
but to your point, I mean, it was a crisis, and that crisis may not be a pandemic next, to the point that your employee was making, but something will probably come up, and hiring the best people, retaining the best people, keeping them happy, training them, so succession works. So all that is something that is top of mind for you today. It may not have been prior to the pandemic. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. As a team, we read books together and look for how we apply the learnings there, and to classics, of course, Good to Great, and that goes right along with the whole who's on the bus. Well, one, where are we going?
Right.
Who's on the bus, and what's the right seat? And that's kind of, we're in the midst of orchestrating that. So that's a priority, and it's a priority for our board of directors. And I got to give them a big plug, because I have been so fortunate to come into an organization really at the height of the pandemic. I joined in 2020.
Oof.
No better time to start a new thing, right?
Why not, right?
So I walked into this with the full support and partnership with our board of directors. They are big believers in investing in our people, and because this business model does not work. I love innovation. I love technology. As of yet, there's no innovation to stack tons of glass bottles on the shelf.
Yeah.
And so we've got to pay attention to our employees.
There's no magical robot out there yet that can just put them out there where you want them and snap your fingers?
Not yet. We're in the process of renovating and upfitting some stores. We redid Park Road Store 6 last year, and we're updating shelving and all that sort of thing. And to fully stock a store from nothing to fully stock is three and a half tractor trailer loads of product.
Wow. Wow.
Each of the max of a tractor trailer is 1,300, 1,400 cases.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a post where I took a before and after picture, and it's this, okay, just get it in here. We'll figure out where it goes later. And the store leader out there just did a phenomenal job of leading that renovation and getting that store back and ready within a month.
Okay. Okay.
That was all humans and sweat and backs and knees. There was no robot.
Yeah. I have a little bit of background in distribution. I worked for a company that had retail stores. It was a smaller part of our business, but we were more industrial distribution. So I sympathize with the the manpower required to manage some of that and count it and maintain it and staff it and train them.
Yep.
It's a daunting task. So I can appreciate that.
Very
now,
much.
let me ask you. You mentioned your board. When you're making a tough decision, you or your team, who do you consult?
Well, on a personal level, there's a small group of trusted folks that I've known for years. Maybe I call them my personal cabinet. I don't know that they know that they're part of my personal cabinet, but they are, lots of lived experience and great counsel and sage counsel. So that's it on a personal level. Clearly, we have an active board, and they are from our chair, Monifa Drayton, to all the board members. They are at the ready to help us think through, problem solve, and bring maybe some things maybe we didn't think about that, because you got to accept that as well, and that has just been a true blessing.
Okay. So you have a pretty diverse set of experiences that you can draw on, whether it be your own personal kind of board, or peers to the board, the actual board.
Yeah. And, the other thing I would add to that, Jeff, is our people. Like I said, we're doing these fireside chats. So we've done four or five so far. Just amazing insight. They're closest to the work. They see it, they experience it every day. And so, can never underestimate the value that comes from spending time listening to. It's not every idea, of course. But, you listen long enough, and particularly you start to see trends or common threads. And it's like, there's something there. We need to tap into that.
Yeah, and customers, it sounded like too, from what you described before.
Oh yeah. We actually, thank you for bringing that up. One of the things I'm really pleased about is, we started a series of focus groups with our mixed beverage customers. Granted, yes, we have rules and regulations, but within that, I believe there's room and flexibility, and so they become a standing fixture within our operation here, where we're listening, talking, and taking down ideas and working on implementation.
Yeah. No different than private enterprise. You have to be plugged into your customers and your people, and yeah, that's good.
Yep.
Now, let me ask you something. I mean, as you look back on your career, who has been maybe the most influential coach or mentor during your career?
Ooh. Wow. Well, there have been so many. For me, it always starts back to me. My parents were, those are lessons that, that there was a book once, Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten, way back when, and those lessons are fundamental about how you listen, how you treat people, how you show up. And so I'm never too far from those base lessons, and then,
Those values.
yeah, because it really is values, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think we separate from them because we're in the workplace. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's a part of your authenticity is how you show up in that way. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, over my time and career, I've had so many great people who have shared so much with me and helped kind of curate the person you see before you.
Okay. Okay. And what made them good? I mean, I understand the parents because I think values are those things that always
Yeah,
stick with you. You don't have to think about those things.
yeah,
It's how you operate, interact.
yeah.
But the folks that were your best mentor or coach, why was that? As you think about it, I mean, what made them that good?
Well, for me, what I've learned about myself at this point in my journey is, all my inventory personality, I'm a high explorer. And I need to go create, innovate, I learn by doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave me room.
Mm.
They gave me a task and said, go. And now that can be a blessing and a curse because you show up expecting everybody else got that same thing. It's like, go, and that's not necessarily true. So I've had to manage my own expectations. But as I think about it, um, from my very first professional job all the way through, it's been people who one believed in me.
Mm-hmm.
Can't underestimate that. But then gave me opportunity and room to go and see possibility and
Okay.
trusted me to do it.
So for future leaders, that's good advice, right? Give some guardrails, but allow
Yep.
freedom for that person to be themselves and create, develop, innovate, all of those things on their own.
Oh, especially now, because
Mm-hmm.
there are things I can't possibly see and know. And I
Mm-hmm.
think from the vantage point of a CEO, you hear a lot of people about cultivate the people around you and trust them, people who know things you don't, because you can't know it all.
Mm-hmm.
But and then as we go into this reorganization here, that's critical. Looking for and people who aren't afraid to ask what if or why.
Okay. Okay.
We may not answer it today, or the answer we get today might not be applicable today, but it's still relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
create the culture that allows people to do that. I think that's
yeah,
one of the things
yeah.
that's really
Oh
important.
my gosh, thank you for that question because I hadn't really thought about it, but that has truly been fundamental for me. Is
Mm-hmm.
those folks who trusted me, gave me room to say go, and I said, okay, now if you don't want me to go, you better tell me because I'm going.
Yeah, that's good. Good advice there, Kiva.
Yeah.
All right, so I got to be mindful a little bit of our time. We got
Yes.
about 5 minutes left. There's a couple
Okay.
things I really want to ask you. So one is, what do you enjoy most about your current role?
Again, I'm back to the social enterprise nature of it. We run a strong business. I've often said in my nonprofit, if there's no money, there's no mission.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get to put both together. And I feel so passionate about investing and giving back. And so I get to do both.
Right. Yeah, I love that the profits are really the investment in the community. I mean, that
Yep.
if somebody were to take away something from today, would you want them to have that, or would you want to say something else that would summarize kind of what you're doing?
I think so. I came up with a tagline as I was preparing for this role. Um, community invested, socially responsible, community invested.
Okay.
And so if you remember nothing else, remember that.
Okay. Good. All right, so let's see. So let's talk about you here for a second. As you look back on your journey, right, of all the roles you've had, what have you learned about yourself?
My team would probably, I told somebody, that you've been around a while when you got a story for every situation, right? So I'm a really old dude, but one of the I've had to manage this. I like to move quickly, not
Hmm.
without thought, not without data, but some of my, it's like, okay, yes, study it to a point, but let's go. And so, I've had to manage that a little better and say, okay, let me slow down. I'm always looking to the next hurdle. I'm learning sometimes I've got to slow up, check on the folks behind me. Are you there? Are you keeping up? Or just on occasion, glance over your shoulder.
Yeah.
Just check the health. So, that's there's a college fraternity story that goes with that, but for another interview. But that has been a metaphor for my professional life, really.
Okay. Yeah, you're steering a ship that has 320 people, right? So it takes a little while to get everybody kind of going the same direction, even though you want to maybe make a turn a little faster.
Yeah, one of the books we're reading actually is called Turn the Ship Around, which is about a nuclear submarine and how a captain came to one of the lowest performing in the fleet and literally turned the ship around in terms of its culture.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a biggie for me.
Okay, got it. So now think about what you've learned and what advice would you give to a new executive or a new CEO based off everything you've learned?
Yeah. I think about good to great and that whole flywheel concept in the book. That whether you know it or not, we're all cumulatively gathering insights and intelligence and information on how to show up, even when you don't know it. And to trust that collection of insights, because that's really creating kind of the you that you show. You marry all that with what is naturally your instincts and inclinations, and that builds your skill set. And hopefully in the process, it builds your confidence. And so the first thing is, I would say, get comfortable with trusting that.
Your own skills. Trust your own skills.
Trust yourself. I mean, there's enough stuff out there to cause you from whatever realm to maybe question your judgment and am I ready, blah, 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 blah. I believe things happen for you when you are ready. You've just got to make the determination to trust that. So that's one. That's a big one. But then the other is back to something we talked about earlier, is surrounding yourself with people who know stuff that you don't, and that you can build a trusting rapport and relationship with. And then, as I said earlier, from my experience, give them room to run. And give direction, hold accountability. This is not just a free-for-all, but but a big thing, again, I've referred to this before, and one of the other books we read was Simon Sinek's Start With Why. Let's always be clear about why. When there's doubt, as often I found we weren't really clear on why we were doing what we were doing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Keva, look, I really appreciate all the time we've spent really over the last 2 days. I've learned a ton about how you manage your business. I've learned a ton about how you invest in the community and the why you operate the way you do. So I really appreciate being on the show, and look forward to sharing this with everybody else.
Oh man, Jeff, thank you so much for finding me and giving me and this board and our teammates this opportunity. And again, we are of service to Mecklenburg County.